it's story time. And you know what that means, right? Our little ritual where we wind down, take care of ourselves, and share some spooky real life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So grab your skincare, pour your favorite drink, and settle in. Tonight, we're talking about a figure from Korean folklore, the Jeoseung-Saja, also known as the messenger of death. They're the ones said to appear when your time is up, guiding souls across to the other side. Today, I have two chilling stories for you. The first is about a man who claims he came face to face with the envoys of death and somehow was spared. The second is about a woman who was cursed with the eyes that see death. Every time someone near her is about to die, she sees the Jeoseung-Saja standing behind them, waiting. Tonight's story is going to be a dark one. Let's begin. A lot of you have been complimenting my skin lately. Thank you. I don't really struggle with freckles or dark spots, and I think that's because I've been consistent with a few products I truly love. Sunscreen is non-negotiable for me, and my holy grail is the Shiseido Anessa sunscreen. It feels so light on the skin, it doesn't leave a white cast, and still gives the strongest protection. Honestly, it's the best of the best. I've tried so many sunscreens, but I always go back to this one. Vitamin serums are another step I never skip. They brighten my skin and help keep everything even-toned. I use a lot of different serums and ampule products, but right now I am obsessed with Medicube Age R Vita C Pro Ampule. And I also use the Hev Blue Single Vita Dark Spot Pine Ampule. Super gentle, but still effective. And I love layering it without worrying about irritation. And recently, I discovered a new favorite. I think this brand is pretty new, the Numbuzin Vitamin Glutathione Dark Spot Laser Cream. It sinks in beautifully, and my skin feels nourished and glowing afterward. And you can find all of these on YesStyle. If you don't know them yet, YesStyle is basically a one-stop shop for Asian beauty and skincare, Korean, Japanese, and so much more. They carry all the cult favorites Koreans use, plus new trending products, and they ship literally everywhere. So if you want to try these out, definitely check out YesStyle. And don't forget to use my code BATB12 for 12% off your order. Have you ever heard of the Jeoseung-Saja, the messengers of death in Korean legend? They aren't gods, they are not judges, they're envoys, dispatched from the afterlife to collect the souls of the dead. And if you're from the West, the closest figure you might think of is the Grim Reaper, the cloaked skeleton with a scythe. Both are harbingers of death, both inspire dread, but the Korean version has its own twist. Unlike the Grim Reaper, who often works alone, the Saja usually comes in pairs, the black envoy and the white envoy, or sometimes called the first and the last. One leads, the other binds the spirit so it can't escape. So when do they come? According to folklore, the Jeoseung-Saja appear at the very moment of death. Sometimes they arrive just before a person's last breath, waiting patiently in silence. Sometimes they appear at sudden deaths, like accidents, misfortune, or illness, ensuring that the soul doesn't get lost. And in other stories, they reveal themselves in dreams or fleeting visions as a warning that the end is near. So to see them is to know that your time has come. Their appearance is always chillingly consistent. Black robes that swallow their bodies, faces hidden in shadow, and eyes that gleam cold in the darkness. People say that if you meet their gaze, you won't just see them. You will see your own deepest fear reflected back at you. In Korean culture, black has long been tied to death, mourning, and the border between the living and the dead. So, the black robe marks them as figures of the other world, impartial and faceless. And as I mentioned before, sometimes they are paired with a figure in white, the traditional Korean color of mourning. So together, black and white complete the cycle. Light and dark, body and soul, life and death. Now, if you've watched K-pop Demon Hunters, you may already recognize a version of them. The film Saja Boys, a demon boy band disguised as K-pop idols, are modeled on that eerie traditional imagery. And of course, the show adds drama and fantasy, but the core imagery, the black garb, the cold presence, comes directly from centuries of Korean lore. And that's the point. These figures are not just entertainment. For generations, people genuinely believed they could appear at any moment. At a deathbed, after a sudden accident, they slip in unnoticed. In a shadow at midnight, a sudden chill in the wind, a silence that feels too heavy. And that uncertainty, never knowing when or where they might appear, was what made them truly terrifying. So what if someone claimed they really saw them, not in a story, not on a screen, but in the shadows of real life? Would you believe it? So tonight, I want to tell you about a man who says he did. We don't know his name, so let's just call him Chinu. Chinu lived an ordinary life until the day an accident dragged him to the threshold of death. And in that in-between place, he says he met them, the envoys of the underworld, face to face. Chinu had spent that day like any other. He went to work in the morning, had lunch with colleagues, and in the evening shared a few drinks and lighthearted conversation with friends. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing to hint at what was waiting for him that night. After midnight, a little tipsy, he decided to walk home instead of hailing a taxi. The city lights thinned as he moved away from the main streets. The roads grew quieter, emptier. That's when a sudden icy gust swept across his collar. He shivered, instinctively pulling his jacket closer. And then a blaring horn, blinding light rushing straight at him. He barely had time to turn his head. A violent impact tore through him, and in an instant, everything went white. His consciousness sank, heavy and slow, as if he were being pulled deep underwater. All sound vanished, all sensation blurred into silence. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer on the street. He stood in a desolate place, an endless plain swallowed in fog. Beneath his feet lay dead gray earth, dry and cracked. Above him stretched nothing, no sky, no stars, just emptiness. His heart pounded so violently he thought his chest might burst, but his limbs felt like stone. He tried to breathe, but it was like invisible hands were gripping his throat, cutting off the air. Panic seized him. Then came a sound. Shh, shh. A sound like heavy fabric dragging across the ground, slowly drawing closer. And then, through the swirling fog, shapes began to emerge. Two tall figures in flowing black robes, their faces hidden deep in shadow. But the eyes, he could see their eyes, but they weren't human eyes. They were the gaze of something ancient, something that saw straight through him down to his very soul. They didn't make a sound as they moved, yet the ground quivered with each step, as if the space itself trembled at their presence. Chinu's hair bristled. His instincts screamed the truth before his mind could catch up. These were no men. They were the envoys he had only heard of in books or movies, the Jeoseung-Saja, the messengers of death. The hems of their robes brushed the fog aside as they drew near, and Chinu felt a pressure pulling at him, as though invisible cords were tightening around his spirit, tugging it away from his body. His chest heaved, his heart thrashed in terror, his strength drained with every second. And then one of them spoke. The voice was low, flat, carrying no trace of warmth. "Chinu, your turn has come." That voice, it didn't come through the air. It wasn't sound in the way we know it. It hit him straight in the head, echoing inside his skull. Chinu's heart just dropped. His vision tunneled into darkness, and in that moment, he knew if he followed that pole, there was no coming back. The envoy's words left him paralyzed. His body couldn't move. His chest was locked tight, and every attempt to breathe felt like someone squeezing the air out of him. Don't resist, it's time. The second one lifted its hand. At first glance, it looked like a person's hand, but the skin was pale, almost glowing, and faint trails of mist curled off its fingertips. The moment it touched his shoulder, he felt it, not on his skin, but deeper, like it was tugging at his very soul. The cold spread through him, sharper than ice, heavier than iron. His body didn't just feel weak. It felt like he was being pulled out of himself, like he was sinking into nothing. He tried to scream, but the sound vanished before it ever left his mouth. Around him, the ground blurred. His footprints disappeared into the fog, and suddenly, he wasn't standing on anything at all, just floating in emptiness. Not yet, I can't go yet. I have to live. He screamed the words in his head, but they crumbled away like bubbles underwater. It was useless. And that's when it happened. Another voice cut through the fog. Low, steady, powerful. Not yet. It is not his time. And suddenly the air itself seemed to shift. The grip on his soul loosened just a little. Even the envoys, those silent figures in black, hesitated. Then he saw it. Through the mist, a shape began to form. A figure glowing faintly like light struggling to push through smoke. And as it came closer, Chinu realized it wasn't just anyone. It felt familiar. An ancestor. The words came again, shaking the empty space around him. Not yet, not his time. And for the first time since the accident, Chinu felt something other than terror. He felt the smallest flicker of hope. The envoy's hand froze, and then, from deep within the fog, a soft light began to seep through. Slowly, an old man's figure appeared. His back was bent, but his steps were steady, and in his hand was a worn wooden staff. What struck Chinu most, though, was his eyes, sharp as a blade, but carrying a weight of authority that silenced everything around them. The moment Chinu met that gaze, he knew. This was his ancestor. It was the face he'd only ever seen in old family photos. His great-grandfather, now standing here at the very edge of the afterlife, wrapped in a faint glow. This boy carries my blood. The old man's voice rang out. His path isn't finished yet. The words were firm, carrying a force that cut through the air. And unbelievably, it worked. The two envoys glanced at each other, then lowered their robes and stepped back. Their eyes, though, never softened, still as sharp and cold as before. We are going this time, but next time, there will be no mercy. The warning rolled through the fog like thunder, echoing long after they had vanished. Then, everything collapsed. A blinding light swallowed Chinu's vision, and the ground beneath him gave way. It felt like he was falling headfirst into nothing, his soul ripped out of the envoy's grip. In its place came crushing weight and burning pain that exploded in his chest. The fog tore open, light and shadow shredding around him, until suddenly, sound came rushing back. 3, 2, 1, press harder. The urgent voices weren't ghostly this time. They were right next to his ear, hands slammed down on his chest, ribs creaking under the force. Air was shoved into his lungs, searing and hot, until it erupted back out of him in a ragged gasp. Then cheers broke out around him. He's breathing, he's back. Keep monitoring, he's not stable yet. Through the haze, Chinu's blurred vision caught glimpses of paramedics leaning over him. Sticky pads from a defibrillator clung to his chest. Cold gel smeared across his skin. Broken glass glittered on the ground. Twisted metal framed the accident site. And the red and blue flash of sirens washed over everything. He was alive. But even as the chaos of the real world closed in, Chinu still heard it. The voice of the envoys, untouched by the noise of sirens or shouting medics. We withdraw this time, but next time there will be no mercy. His heart was beating again, but every thud felt fragile, as though it could stop at any moment. And with what little strength he had left, Chinu whispered through trembling lips. They were real, the envoys of death, they were really there. Chinu swears that he crossed the threshold of death and came face to face with the envoys. And that encounter changed everything for him. Since that night, Chinu has been living what he calls his second life. He doesn't waste his days anymore. He avoids wrongdoing, spends his time helping others, donating where he can, trying to leave the world just a little brighter than he found it. Because when the envoys return, and he knows they will, he wants to go without regret. Maybe Chinu's story is just a near-death hallucination, or maybe he really brushed shoulders with the messengers of the underworld. Either way, it is a reminder that nothing in life is guaranteed, not even tomorrow. And there is another real-life story about a woman named Jeoseung, who was said to be born with a strange eye, an eye that sees death itself. And whenever she sees it, she also sees them. The messengers in black robes waiting silently in the background. Even as a child, Jeoseung was different. Her parents would find her sitting alone in the dark, staring at a corner of the room as if listening to someone whisper. At night, she sometimes woke up screaming, her eyes wide with terror, insisting that someone had been standing by the bed. Doctors told her parents it was just nightmares, just childhood imagination. But her grandmother, the one who raised her most of her life, knew better. She would press a talisman into Jeoseung's hand, whispering old prayers, warning her to keep her eyes closed if she ever saw shadows moving where they shouldn't. You see more than you should, her grandmother would say softly. That is both a gift and a curse. Years later, when her grandmother lay frail in the hospital bed, Jeoseung refused to leave her side. She held her hand until exhaustion pulled her into sleep. That was when the dream came. In the dream, she was still in the same room, but the air was thicker, heavy like water pressing against her skin. The machines were silent. The lights flickered with a sickly yellow glow. And in the corner of the room, two figures appeared. They were impossibly tall, draped in black robes that dragged along the floor. Their faces were hidden, but she could feel their eyes, cold and piercing, fixed on her grandmother. One carried a dim lantern, swaying as if lit by dying embers. The other held a rope, black and smoky. Jeoseung tried to scream, but her throat wouldn't work. She tried to move, but her body was frozen. All she could do was watch as the men approached her grandmother's bed. Her grandmother's spirit sat up, pale, confused, clutching the bed sheets like a child. Without a word, she stood and followed them. The rope was draped across her shoulders, and the lantern's dim glow lit the path to the door. Jeoseung's chest constricted, tears burning her eyes. She tried to reach to stop them, but her arms wouldn't move. And just before her grandmother stepped into the darkness, one of the envoys turned its head. For the first time, it looked directly at her. And when Jeoseung woke up, the heart monitor was flatlined. Nurses and doctors were rushing in, and she knew, without anyone telling her, that grandmother was gone. From that night forward, Jeoseung's eyes were no longer normal. It began small. On the subway, she noticed an old man across from her. His outline seemed dimmer, blurred at the edges, as if his body was fading into the background. And behind him, standing at the edge of the aisle, were the two black-robed men watching patiently. And at the next station, the man slumped forward, clutching his heart. The train erupted in panic, but Jeong stayed frozen, her eyes locked on the envoys. They didn't look surprised. They didn't even move to hide. They only stared at her, as if they knew she could see them. And in that moment, she just knew the old man didn't survive. After that, she began seeing it everywhere. A woman coughing in a cafe, her skin tinted gray. A boy on the street corner, his eyes already hollow. Each time the envoys were there, silent, patient, always standing close behind. And she never needed confirmation. Without fail, every person she saw that way was marked for death. At first, the envoys ignored her, but as the weeks went on, they began to notice. One evening, she passed a car accident. A body was lying under a sheet, and there they were, waiting by the wreckage. As she hurried by, one of them turned its head again, but that was enough. Her blood turned to ice. Later, she started dreaming of them, not far away, not leading someone else, but in her own room, standing at the foot of her bed, watching her as she slept. She would jolt awake, the air around her thick and cold now, her sheets heavy with a weight that wasn't there a moment before. And once, she heard them whisper, "Not yet." The visions crushed her. She stopped going out. Crowds were unbearable. Too many people, too many faces she could see fading. And the black-robed men trailing behind. She covered her eyes when she passed hospitals. She prayed every night not to see them. And yet, when she lay in bed at night, she wondered if she was cursed. Am I only seeing death, or am I calling it closer? But the worst was when it happened with people she knew. Her neighbor's little boy waved to her in the hallway one morning. She smiled back, then froze. Behind him, at the end of the corridor, two shadows stood. And by evening, she heard the boy had been rushed to the hospital with a sudden fever. He didn't make it through the night. And when she looked in the mirror after the funeral, she thought she saw them again, standing just behind her reflection. Now Jeong lives with a cursed eye, the gift or curse her grandmother warned about. She sees death before it happens. She sees the Jeoseung-Saja, the envoys of the underworld waiting at the edges of life. And every time they notice or noticing them, they come a little closer. The last line she left behind was this: "It's not just about seeing death anymore. I think they're waiting for me. They're letting me see them so I'll know when they come. And when they finally do, I won't be able to look away." I really hope she's doing okay, because living with something like that would be unbearably traumatic. But it also makes me wonder, what would you do if you really saw them? Would you be able to follow peacefully knowing you lived without regrets? Or would you cling to this life no matter the cost? Let me know what you guys think about this story. And remember, death comes for everyone, but how we live until that moment is what really matters. Okay, hope you guys have a great night and see you guys soon. Bye.